first and foremost here, you hear about these talks breaking down. How far could this continue to go on at this juncture, as it seems the two parties are not even close to potentially netting out a full deal that will be brought to a vote?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Great to be back. Who knows exactly how long this is going to take? I don't think it's going to be much more of a meaningful amount of time. Obviously, historically, the last strike lasted almost 2 months. Obviously, that wouldn't be great for Boeing, but last week, the employees received, missed their first paycheck, and obviously we're off of healthcare. So, we'll see where this goes, and I think the big picture is sort of a near-term blip, and in the long term, there's a decade plus of backlog for commercial aircraft demand for the two OEMs, and Boeing is one of the two. And there's just a lot of secular tailwinds for the industry. So I think in the long term, this is not going to be meaningful.
Tony, I guess my question to you is, since Gabelli is a shareholder of Boeing, whether or not, I guess at what point would you then become concerned, and maybe would this alter or influence your view on Boeing?
Again, I think they're going to come to some reasonable, end to this. Obviously, I think the union wants to have their employees employed and working, and this is it's a great company. It's obviously it's an American icon, and I think Boeing will negotiate appropriately. Obviously, there's some things in there that I think are going to be difficult to overcome, like a defined benefit program, which I think that's just not a modern way of having some form of benefit program in a modern economy. So I think there's some things that are going to have to be worked out, but in the long run, I think this will get wrapped up relatively soon, and Boeing and the union will be on their way.
And will Boeing still be a profitability competitive company at the end of it and on the other side, as that was one of the warning signs that they were communicating?
Right. Again, I think the devil's in the details, of course. But if Boeing's producing at rate for the 737, getting back to essentially around 50 jets a month, which it was doing pre mishap, that's almost about 10 billion or so of EBITDA on a run rate. So that turns into a pretty profitable cash flow engine. And of course, there's a $500 billion of backlog in Boeing's commercial book. So I think there's a lot of runway to go for Boeing.
To what extent do some of those costs then get passed on to the airline operators that either have future orders that they'd like to place with Boeing, because this wouldn't impact, I imagine, at least some of the existing contracts that they're delivering on. So now it really kind of goes out to how Boeing is selling itself and its product, and the innovation that is going to be set to come in years down the line versus an Airbus, and kind of on the competitive metrics there, how can they say, all right, X amount of aircraft are going to be delivered, the pricing is going to be just a little bit higher as a result of this deal, and which airlines are perhaps most likely to say, you know what, we'll just take delivery of the aircraft that we have right now, and then we'll see later on down the line how many we can take on from there.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, Brad. That's very insightful, and that's sort of the crux of it. Historically, what has happened is the OEMs have passed along those increased costs to their customer, in which I believe the customer is readily willing to accept, as they need these planes. These planes are not, it is a razor blade model, and the razor blade is the plane, and they only have so many cycles in them, and they need new aircraft. And and Airbus, for all intents and purposes, is in a similar situation. I mean, they've talked about their production numbers not making what they were expecting in their initial outlook. Just recently, so they're in a similar situation, and it's the COVID made a lot of changes to the supply chain, and that's what we're, I think, in the situation right now. But it will, it's going to improve over time.
Tony, what do you think the priority needs to be for the new CEO there? Obviously, it's been a tough start when you come into the fact that he has been dealing with these strikes and negotiations that don't seem to be making obviously as much progress as they had hoped. What do you think needs to be that near-term focus, aside from getting some sort of deal on these negotiations, in order to get Boeing back on track?
Yeah, Sean, I think that you hit on that's the key. Number one, they've got to knock out this negotiation issue and get the strike settled and move on. They were obviously moving right, and they just put out their deliveries yesterday, and actually the numbers were pretty good relative to expectations. So they were on track to recovering after the January 5th incident. That's number one. Number two, they need to work with the FAA, and I think it will probably meld at the same time where they're getting to about that 38 rate, and the FAA will probably take off the 38 cap. And then number three, just getting the supply chain squared away on the 787 and the 737. And then lastly, the defense business. They need to make that business profitable, more profitable, and get those those fixed price development contracts coming off and improve that.